This is Let's Talk Leadership, and I'm your host, Victor Vogel. And it appears for some reason that my YouTube program actually didn't go off as planned. So I want to take a few moments and try to bring that back up here and run a question and answer session for anyone who's interested in asking questions about leadership here on the program today. The There we go. I want to make sure everything is pretty well set. So I have no idea why the process that I scheduled earlier didn't go through. I don't think I've ever had that problem on LinkedIn, but now I'm back to the point where I'm trying to reestablish everything here and go on YouTube Live for anybody who might want to be asking questions. So let me just take a second here and uh, you can, let's see here. Okay, there we go. So what I can do here is kind of reestablish sort of what I was trying to do earlier. And really, what this podcast is all about is it allows you to come online and for the next half hour or so and ask questions that you would like to discuss about leadership. Leadership's extremely important topic today. I don't know any organizations that I was ever in or that I can even think about right now today that don't have leaders in them. So that's how important leaders are. But there's also a dilemma with the perception that people have about leadership today, in my opinion. It's how the Renaissance leadership odyssey paradigm came about. It's something that I offer to organizations and individuals to help them begin to understand what they're going to have to change about their perception of leadership and the role of leadership that we're going to have available to us over the next decade or two that will help leaders be more successful in dealing with all of the things that are going on. I mean, you can kind of see leadership crumbling all around you right now. I'm gearing up all my equipment here, so give me just a minute to kind of catch up on everything. Uh, it's leadership is crumbling. I mean, just look at the government in the United States, and we have one whole political party that's totally in disarray. The other one is fairly stable and is leading like you would expect the leadership to behave, but the rest of the other party is down, and consequently, uh, the work that leaders should be doing that the people elected them to do, is just not getting done. Uh, and it's primarily a failure in leadership. That's all you can say about it. It's there's resources there to do it. There's certainly the capability in certain leaders to do it, but others are just blocking the progress that can happen. Now, you find this in companies too. I mean, we're beginning to see people extremely frustrated with leadership. You beginning to see sort of an uprising of employees to try to regain some sense of balance and power between them and corporations so that they have some ability to control uh, an environment so they want to work or be engaged in that environment. And companies are resisting this with the existing leadership paradigm we have today, and that's leading to a resurgence of leaders, or I'm sorry, a resurgence of unions, and how people feel about unions. They feel like the only way they can balance the power within an organization between the leadership and the employees is through the masses of employees. In other words, if everybody goes on strike, the company basically shuts down. And then you're into all those battles, and everybody gets hurt by that. But it's the only way employees have of balancing the power against uh, organizations that are autocratic and authoritarian in nature and are really not too concerned about employees other than they are useful to deliver more money to them in the long run. So uh, that's a lot of view of what's going. Then you have this real debate between authoritarianism, fascism, and democracy, and the more liberal perspective of how we view our democracy is built on um, a balance between conservative and liberal points of view. When that's skewed one way or the other, there seems to be a real disengagement with people out and people are just not pleased with governments and that like it's the same way about companies now. That's why you have the battle between the work from home versus back in the office environment. The pandemic gave us a taste of what we could really have, and we have really never gotten back to this full on site approach to doing things. And it's caused companies and people to begin to maybe come up with solutions to service both of those needs of the individual plus the corporation. So that's what's happening in leadership. And frankly, it's an interesting time for leadership because for years and years and years, for 4 decades I was in it, before I retired 15 years ago, the 4 decades I was in it, uh, organizations pretty much had control over employees, is what it amounted to. And now that's beginning to be challenged. There's an issue or a balance associated with that. And so there's ways organization can behave and the culture they can create that will embrace what employees are looking for. First of all, you can go look at any organization that's out there, and all organizations have leaders, like I said earlier, uh, but not all leaders lead equally well, and not all organizations create a culture that allow leaders to lead equally well. And so the fact that there are so many fewer leaders than actual employees in the organization uh, would think that the employees, by the sheer number of them, would have a sense of power over the organization. But it's really interesting in that employees don't really want that. They don't want the power over the organization. They don't want to lead the organization. They don't want to make the decision process. It's one of the mistakes that were made back in 1990s when they were trying to flatten organizations. There was this big push. We're going to flatten the organization. We're going to take a lot of the middle leadership out and just take it from the top and straight down to the bottom. And we're going to give that employee down at the bottom a lot more authority, a lot more responsibility to do things and make decisions. That didn't really ever happen. And One of the reasons is they never really ask employees if they wanted that role. And they don't. They don't. They just want to go to work, put in their hours, have a sense of a place of sense of security where they know they have an income coming in, where other people can do the creative and the developmental things that need to make an organization go and be successful, and then ask employees to do what they need to do in order to make that happen. Employees are generously wanting to do that as long as they're seen as being valued. In other words, yes, you have the money. Yes, you have the ideas. And yes, you have the leadership structure to create and innovate and design and change and manage the organization to success. But without employees, that success doesn't happen. So they play an important role, and to some extent, you consider it a lesser role in how the company operates, but an important role in that the company has to operate. So they have to, they need the employees. So I think one of the things that we miss when we talk about leadership and employees and organizations is the desire. Employees don't want to be decision makers. They don't want that. It's just not in who they are. Uh, Now, some employees may come on board to learn to grow in the organization, become leaders. That's okay. But that's not the vast majority of your employees. The vast majority of your employees just want to do the work that they enjoy doing and they know contributes to your success as a company. But in turn, they want enough perception of their value that they can have a good life and live their life. That's why they're working. So they, they can have a home, they can have a couple of cars, they can put their kids through school. Their kids can grow up with good values of wanting to work for companies like the one dad or mom worked for. In fact, there are some out there who would love to just have dads working in there or moms working in there and the other parents staying home with the children because that gives everybody a good sense of security and growth in the family. And that's why they work. They don't want to make your decisions. They don't want to invest in your company other than the work that they put in there. Now, the whole idea of profit sharing is sort of falling off to the side, except for executives out there. Used to be employees were often incentivized by getting stock along with their bonus as a way of the more successful the company is, the more successful the employee will be. But that doesn't seem to be a major draw for folks nowadays. You have to be at a level where you're making enough to earn a decent living, be able to put some money in savings, have a little left over for vacations, pay for kids, deal with emergency situations. You have to be in that status of the Maslow hierarchical need, the security and the survival and the security levels are all met, in which case then uh, those stock options become valuable kinds of things that people can use to cement their future. And so, consequently, it's a real value with staying with a company who does that and offers that kind of value and considers employees important to them. This is for some reason we've lost all of that over the last 4 decades. I was in leadership, that was going away in pieces and droves, and it was all of that you would spend money in a company on is being filtered back up to the executive level of the organization. It wasn't necessarily even being reinvested in the company. It was making those at the top a little richer, and there would begin to be a large disparity in financial equity between the top and the bottom. All of this, that middle leader is suffering through a lot of what employees are suffering through. They don't get that necessarily get that stock option either, and or if it wasn't a public company, there was no way of uh, an employee or the middle leader group to feel invested in the organization as a whole, unless it was some sort of bonus or incentive program. And those varied depending on how well the company was doing. But there was nothing that made the company feel ownership or the employee feel ownership in the company. And a lot of that began to dissolve. A lot of that. So the benefits thing became less important to employees, and their sense of security, whether the company was solvent enough that they felt comfortable they would have a job for several years. Uh, and then along in the 90s during the acquisition, early 90s, and I mean, mid to late 90s and early 2000s, there was a big push about acquiring and acquisition and, to reduce competitiveness and to build larger organizations. And with that came layoffs. So now employees are definitely not locked into the idea that their the survival and the security aspect, the basic two levels that you need satisfied for an employee to feel comfortable and even consider things that are of value to the company. They're worried about themselves now because they have no guarantee that they're going to have any jobs in the future. The salary percentages were going from 6 and 8% to 1 and 3%, and so they're seeing all this transition over time. And I think it's become evident to people, and so consequently, leadership by definition, is not viewed very positively as much as it used to be. It's not as revered as it used to be. It's not as respected as it used to be. Because employees are beginning to go out and say, hey, I can go out on the internet and try to be an influencer or something like that. If you look at the thousands of influencers are out there and the hundreds of thousands who have failed at that is not a good ratio to be thinking about. It's not an extremely positive ratio. It's kind of like it's marketed a lot, so it's in front of people as being very positive, and people who are looking for that. They have hope, and they're looking for that, and they're grabbing for that. I mean, I know that when somebody posts something on Facebook that says, hey, I've got the ideal entrepreneur. You can leave your company and just work for yourself, and you have all this free time, and I'm making, $10,000 a month. Come let me know what you are. And you go in and you give your address and your phone numbers or whatever else. It turns out to be a scam. Uh, that's how people are gathering information about you. Uh, that's one thing. And even if it's legit, the likelihood that it may be actually successful for you is probably slimmer percentage wise than if you just stayed at your organization. So, but that lure of being on your own, having your own freedom, doing your own thing, doing stuff like I'm doing with you here now. But the problem is, I'm not making any money doing this with what I'm doing here now, and I probably wouldn't make a lot of money if I had to. I have a retirement income I'm falling back on it, but that's dwindling as I speak for a lot of reasons, inflation of other things. But overall, I have my basic needs met, and they're not as much as when I was older and had kids and house and family and all that kind of stuff to deal with. But I don't have that. So I can get on here and do this, and I don't have to make money at it. I can do what I really would like to do on this show, and that is just help people become better leaders because I got such a kick out of that. That was so absolutely rewarding to me, and I missed it. I retired for 15 years, and I missed that interaction with other people, helping them talk through their issues, working them through a particular problem or a particular approach to something, helping them see through their own discovery process. The way you can do this is through asking questions, or and they end up discovering, oh yeah, this makes sense. Seeds in them the knowledge they need to be good leaders in the future. uh, that's not a hard thing to do when you're retired. You have, I mean, any kind of income, even though it's a fixed income, and you're only earning whatever you have in your retirement nest egg. And like me, I have Social Security, so I can put on top those two things on top of each other, and I have an okay living. I'm not rich. I don't need to be rich. I'm not even thinking about why I would want to be rich or what I would have to put into being rich. Everybody thinks about Hollywood stars and everything. I don't know. I mean, if you have to put on a disguise to go have dinner at a restaurant you enjoy, otherwise you get mobbed by paparazzi or people wanting autographs. I don't know that if you love that kind of stuff, I guess that's for you. I personally would that would be one of the worst things I feel like I could lived with. It just wouldn't be a good life. So leadership has its unique environments and its skill sets, and in your lifetime, if you're really a good leader, uh, really what you're focused on are making other, taking care of other people, meeting their needs and helping them see how they can do that through helping your organization. That's the whole gist of it, folks. It's not hard. It's not rocket science. Wait a minute, please. It's not rocket scientist, but it can be hard. It can be difficult. It can be time consuming, and if you don't have the right mental focus on what you're doing, another what I call the that we have missed developing in leaders for 4 decades, what I call the psychological leadership profile. Who you are, what is it about you that makes you excited about being a good leader. We spent no time working on that with people before we put them into leadership roles. If they were good salespeople, we put them in a leadership role. That's not what they wanted to do. It's not who they are internally, and or are they equipped and have been trained to handle the decisions processes that you have to go through as a leader to be an effective leader. And we've spent no time helping them grow that. You can grow that, you can build it. But if you're building it in real time while you're a leader, you're making mistake after mistake after mistake. It gets draining on you. And it's one thing that's different about the Renaissance Leadership Odyssey paradigm program is I am trying to get corporations to visualize they need to bring all this leadership development back in house. They need to get re-engaged on dealing with leaders and employees in a much different way than they're doing today. We have slipped too far in one direction. We need to bring that back and balance that out, and so that employees, as well as the leadership and the executives in the corporation, are all pretty much aligned with their needs. All those needs of all of those people are aligned. And when they're aligned, that's when you have a healthy culture. That's when you don't have a toxic culture. You have a healthy culture, and the leader can then begin to be effective in what they're doing. So this is uh, one methodology, is trying to get a different paradigm for leadership. Now that requires that's not something you can easily do across the internet. Uh, it requires you to have some interaction with those whom you're trying to help, some trust to be built, and some knowledge. You have to know people, interact with them. You have to have strong interpersonal communication with them, and you have to know how to interface with them, and you have to know who you are. You have to be comfortable enough with yourself to be able to do that. And then there's a possibility that something like I'm doing with you here now, but not really, because there's nobody asking me a question over here on the right. I have the chat box up. Nobody's asking a question. If somebody's looking at this, then I have no idea what you're looking at unless you put in there, hey, I'm watching this, and it hits in the chat box. If you don't interact with me, I don't know if I'm helping you. I don't know. I can't possibly perceive how anybody think they can be helping somebody when the communication is asynchronous. In other words, you may not see this for months, and it's all one way. You know, if you can talk with me, if we can share, if we can get a dialogue going, a dialogue is involving two or more people, and we can really start discussing and getting in and running thoughts about leadership across each other. Then you can begin to grasp certain things that you may not know, and all through that process of in my 45 years of being a leader and having people work for me, some of them 10, 15 years at a time, and others lesser time, but spending tremendous amount of hours with them, working with them as a consultant or a leader, and over weeks and days, weeks and months, and even sometimes years, uh, getting people to know who you are and feel comfortable around you, and your advice then becomes valuable because they see it as valuable over time. uh, Leadership begins to take a different significant role. I mean, you truly are helping people evolve their needs through you and through the organization, and linking those, you become the linking pins between that leadership at the top and those employees. And that is critical to creating that need alignment, that the where the organization has a need, employees have a needs. We're trying to figure, we're certainly trying to make sure you have enough money and you can survive and you can come to work, and that's why things like childcare and all that are extremely important to employees, because if that's not solved, they can't be even though they have to come and work with you, they can't be concerned about your organization because they're worried about, who have I left my child with, or I can't come in today because my child is ill and I don't have anybody to take care of him. And those needs are prevalent in society. In fact, the masses. Like I said, there are fewer employees than there are leaders. I mean, there are fewer leaders than there are employees. And employees have all these needs that these leaders have to counterbalance with the organization's demand to deliver what they need to deliver. So, no, you can't separate the personal life of an employee from their role in business. They're inextricably intertwined to the point where you have to deal with them in its totality. And leaders aren't trained to how to handle those emotional intelligence concepts. And it's because we don't understand enough about ourselves to understand how to even consider empathy, for example. And so there's a lot of processes we've done wrong and we're currently doing wrong that have taken us to where leadership is today. And that's not a good place. It's not a good place if you're out there looking at it. So, what I'm trying to do, and I don't know if this is going to work, and if it doesn't work, that's fine. I'm not trying to get likes because likes, frankly, don't mean anything to me. I don't know you. If I can't get you here and talk with you online or privately online like this, I can't interact. I can't get the full picture through an asynchronous program like chats or posts or comments. People get frustrated. Well, what do you mean by this in a comment? And I'm going, I don't know what I mean totally about it because I don't have all the facts. You're not explaining to me. I can't see how you're reacting to what I'm saying. So I don't know how to adjust. All of that is missing in trying to run leadership through social media. It is not a social media profession. It is a people profession requiring you to be there with people. So, yes, you can work remote, but there's so many things you have to overcome with that you don't get in the real environment. And if you're an employee and you're thinking you want to be your own person, you think you want to operate remote, then you've got a lot of things that you have to consider. Because frankly, that from a security and a survival and security perspective, that can be an extremely dangerous situation. All of that disappears overnight for something you had no control over. Somebody creates something like AI, all of a sudden we don't need programmers anymore. I was just watching a show earlier on YouTube, and it says, "Hey," or IBM is putting this out by IBM Watson. It's simply saying, "Hey, you can get this program written in like 10% of the time that you used to spend on writing this programmer with IBM Watson." Well, guess what? If you can get it done at 10% of the time, then I don't need you the other 90% of the time if that's all you're going to do is that one thing. So now I'm expecting you to do nine more things and nine more programs other than that one with Watson. Or eventually Watson will just right, or I don't need nine other employees all working on that same program, delivering it to me nine times. I can just one person give me nine programs. There you go. Nine people in the street. And that was a great profession when you first started and out in your college career. Programming, writing code, and all that kind of stuff was great. Guess what? We don't need you anymore. We have Watson. We have Genie. We have Chat GPT. We have all these AI programs that can kind of do that. And I don't really need a training and development person that I sit in the office and say, design and create something here for me we can present that we can take out for these teams to present with these teams that we're going to do this program on whatever it is, conflict management. Let's say we have a program on conflict management. I don't need a design as an executive. I don't need a design programmer. I can actually go on something called symbiosis or something like that. You can go to Facebook and find it. Uh, and I can write out an AI prompt saying I need a 1 hour team building program on conflict management that I can present, an actual programmer. And I needed something I can just have it available to show. And they create this for you, conflict management. It's actors that have actually gone in there and people use their voices. And once you type that in there, AI can convert that into whatever you want them to say about conflict management. You can actually create they'll bring an image of this person doing that. And so it's not a real person. But guess what? You can go down there and you can let people watch this program and present it. And we don't actually need you to do the presenting. We can just present it to that team. We can say, hey, look, it's going to be available 3 o'clock on the screen. Watch this and take notes. That's what's happening. I mean, so if you think you're secure in in these new entrepreneurial adventures you want to get into, uh, those things are going to be uh, changing on a consistent basis over the next decade. And leaders and companies are going to have to figure out how they make these kinds of things work, uh, how they fit them into the organization, and how that relates to an employee and by the way, that person never wants a vacation. They never want any kind of raises. They don't want any, they're never sick. They have no family situations to deal with. That's the danger you're wrestling with when you're not working with inside an organization. Um, and your value becomes your innovativeness, the connectivity, the community that organization has that allows them to exist um, and provide service to companies. So I've talked about leadership a lot here. There's a lot of other things that we could be talking about. I can't talk about it forever because obviously, if there's no questions, there's nothing to respond to in a personal kind of way here on YouTube. So this is YouTube Live. This is Let's Talk Leadership. It's where you can ask a 45-year veteran of leadership and leadership development and consulting the questions that you have about leadership, what's going on, issues about leadership you're dealing with, whether you're a leader, whether you're an employer, whether you're someone who is just trying to learn about leadership, whether you have ideas or thoughts about leadership, what does that mean in organizations today? Um, I'm here to try to help you respond to something. I'm not charging you anything to do that. So you have that opportunity uh, to ask me questions. I'm going to do a few more of these. Of course, if I don't have any responses, then it's not worth my time to get on the air and do them anymore. So I'll just pull this particular podcast off the air and put it in mothballs. Sure would be nice to have the interaction from people out there who are struggling. So, but I don't, it looks like I don't have the money or the desire to market this kind of stuff. So it's going to happen by word of mouth. So if you see this and you're interested in continuing it, then you need to let me know in the comments section. Okay? So you have a good day. I hope you've discovered something about leadership anyway. At least giving you something to think about. Have a good day.